Hi everyone, it's Mark. Welcome back. In this video, I want to talk to you about the CBA, the Constructive Baker Act. So what do I mean by that? So let me take you back a few years, actually about 30 years, I think it was a bit longer now, when I was in law school. And I was taking a real property class with a really awesome professor who was talking to us about landlord and tenant law and came to us with the concept of constructive eviction. And so the scenario was this: you've rented an apartment or a house from somebody, but the landlord doesn't maintain the property. Maybe there's the plumbing doesn't work, or there's leaks inside the property, or the heating or air conditioning is completely broken. Things of that nature. Basically, the property becomes unlivable, and so you have no choice but to leave. And so the whole idea of constructive eviction is really it's as if you've been evicted and are leaving the property. And so it's not that you've actually been, physically evicted. No one's gone to court and got a court order to evict you, but the circumstances and conditions are such that it's as if you've been evicted because you had to leave because of the circumstances. So in this video, I'm talking to you about the Constructive Baker Act, and that is a term that I've come up with when, for all intents and purposes, someone has been Baker Acted, even though the facility is saying that you haven't. So in this particular case arose where I had a call from a mom whose son had been Baker Acted, according to her, and I believe she was correct. And the hospital was saying to her, listen, your child is here. He's not been Baker Acted, but he's not free to leave. And so she said, well, then why is he there? And they said, well, he's agreed to stay. And so she says, well, then he's revoking his voluntary consent, his alleged voluntary consent, and he wants to leave. You've got 24 hours to let him go from the time that he revokes his consent. And what had apparently happened was that twice, on two separate occasions, the son had signed paperwork saying he revokes his consent to be there. And the hospital said to him, are you sure you want to do this? Because if you do, we're going to involuntarily commit you, which means that we can hold you for up to 72 hours, and then we're going to go to court and get a court order. And so the family called me. They were distraught, and I said, it sounds to me like your son's been Baker Acted. They said, no, the hospital is telling us that our son has not been Baker Acted. And I said, this is what's known as a Constructive Baker Act. And they said, well, we've never heard of this term. And I said, well, it's not the statute, and I'm pretty sure that no other lawyers will even tell you about this, but let me tell you how this works. It's as if your son has been Baker Acted. They may not have involuntarily committed him. They may not have gone to court and got a court order, but what they've done is that basically they have coerced and browbeaten him to the point where he's not only agreed to stay, but he's agreed to not revoke his consent. And what that does is it enables the hospital to sort of avoid the whole going to court thing, and so that a judge doesn't have to see and review, the kind of shenanigans that they've been up to. And so what I did was, I filed an emergency petition with the court, and I told the court, this is a Constructive Baker Act. The hospital is denying that the person has been Baker Acted, but the facts and circumstances are that, in effect, they have been Baker Acted because, well, they may have voluntarily agreed to stay, but they've done so, after being browbeaten, threatened, and cajoled. Well, that's not voluntary consent. That's a Baker Act. And the hospital can sort of, polish it up and sugarcoat it any way they want. That's a Baker Act. And ultimately, when we got to court, the hospital realized they'd been caught with their hand in the proverbial cookie jar, and they let the person go. But look, this is just sort of another example of the kind of shenanigans and malfeasance that goes on inside Baker Act facilities, because they know nobody's watching them, and they know that there's no oversight, and they also know that unless somebody like me comes along that handles a lot of these cases and knows exactly how this thing works, they know they can get away with it. So look, if you've got a loved one who's been Baker Acted, time is of the essence. These cases are won or lost really within the first couple of days. If you wait, for more than that, then you risk the hospital running to court and getting a court order. And once there's a court order in place, it's near impossible to get somebody out. So with that said, thanks for tuning in. See you in the next video.